Hey, a live reading of Star Wars by Steve Barlow and Steve Skidmore. I'm starting from Chapter 1 of Episode 4, 5, and 6. Gotcha. Star Wars. A story of unbelievable heroism, unspeakable villainy, and unlimited merchandising opportunities. Digitally remastered in Pager Vision with surround words. May the Force be with you. Long, long ago, in a galaxy far, 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 far away. Well, when we say long ago, we mean quite a long time ago. Not all that long ago, for instance, not right at the beginning of the universe, because everything was very hot then. And the highest form of life was a sort of worm that wasn't really very much more intelligent than the average daytime TV presenter. But much longer ago than when you could wear a duffel coat without being laughed at, or your last birthday. And when we say far away, not right at the other end of the universe, obviously, we wouldn't know anything about it because of relativity. But a lot further away than, say, the next toilet stop on the motorway. Okay. Episode 4, A New Hype. Well, you can't expect the readers to start here. This is episode 4. This is kind of a foreword by the writers, Steve Barlow and Steve Skidmore. Okay. Yes, you can't expect the readers to start here. This is episode 4. But this is the ideal place to start. Why? If they start reading here, they won't know what happened in episodes 1, 2, and 3. Oh, well, I guess they can find out by turning the book over. But if they do that, they'll start at the beginning of the story, but not the beginning of the legend. Say what? In any case, episode 4 is the real humdinger. But why shouldn't they start at episode 1? But if they did that, this wouldn't be the original story, would it? It would be a sequel because the story starts earlier, whereas if they start here, the earlier part of the story would be a prequel, so this would be a sequel, because you can't have a sequel to a prequel. That would just be ridiculous. Wait just a minute, they start at the middle, where do they go from there? They go to the beginning next! The beginning? Is this a sequel to the middle? I've been through this, it can't be a sequel because it happened before, that's why we call it a prequel. I call it ridiculous. Why can't they just start at the beginning? Why indeed? Oh well, let's just get on with it, shall we? Roll the credits, cue music. What do you mean, cue music? This is a book, we haven't got any music. Well, I'm sure the readers will want some music. What do they expect for a few measly quid? London Symphony Orchestra? Oh well, if you insist. All together now. Da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 da. Alright, here we go. Okay. The Empire is in turmoil. The rebel forces of the Grand Order of Democratic, Independent, Emancipated Societies, or Goodies for short, are at war with the Empire's dreaded enforcement agency, the Bureau for the Advancement of Destruction, Depravity, and Incredibly Evil Schemes. Baddies. Goodies' spies have managed to steal the plans for the baddies' new secret weapon, an armored space station with enough firepower to vaporize entire planets, known as the Moon of Doom. Fleeing from the dreaded baddies, Princess Leia Origami of the planet El Capone knows that only she and the stolen plans she carries can bring hope to the hard-pressed rebels. Shall we begin? Chapter 1. Gotcha. Patrol being Fibiki of the Galactic Police lounged in the saddle of his gleaming space cycle as it hovered in a parking orbit behind a small asteroid. He was bored. Sector Omega was a dead-end assignment. Well off the spaceways, nothing ever happened out here. Fibiki was a Kojakian. However it's pronounced, Kojakian. Most of the officers in the Galactic Traffic Patrol were. Kojakians were the best cops in the galaxy because they each had a blue flashing light on top of their heads. They didn't have a hat with a blue flashing light on top of their heads, they just had a blue flashing light on top of their heads. They were also dedicated, unimaginative, and easily bribed. In other words, they were perfect for the job. Just as Fibiki was wondering whether to pursue his inquiries to the latest gangland slaying at the lawless planet of Toony Looney, or to nip down to L's Cosmic Diner for a taco, spaceship hurtled. A spaceship hurtled past doing at least whoosh factor 8. Fibiki glanced at the speed limit sign hovering just beyond the asteroid. It clearly said whoosh factor 4. Fibiki grinned to himself and lowered his visor. Alrighty then. He twisted the hand grip to gun the bike's powerful twin Rugrat and Diaper PP3 engines, and rocketed out of his hiding place at whoosh factor 9. Fibiki grinned to himself as he bent low over his handlebars, the engines howling beneath him. From its markings, Fibiki identified the speeding vessel as a senator's ship. A speeding ticket for the senator's ship would lead to a big arrest, or a big bribe. Either way was fine with Fibiki. His blue light rotated faster with excitement, and he switched his ultra siren on. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, whatever, shut up. Seconds later, high-powered custom Hartney-Davidson space bike rocketed past Fibiki as if he was standing still, followed by several huge wedge-shaped somethings. The wash from their mighty engines sent Fibiki's tiny one-man space cycle tumbling out of control. Desperately fighting his bucking machine, Fibiki plowed into an asteroid that seemed to consist entirely of mud. Or at least that's what Fibiki hoped it was. With a quivering tentacle, Patrol-being Fibiki wiped glop from his eyes and stared after the rapidly disappearing ships. What in the galaxy was that? He gasped. That was a fleet of Star Crushers commanded by Dark Visor. The Dreadlord leaned back in his leather saddle of his Mega Hog chopper. Arms raised to the handlebars, before him stretched the gleaming forks. Behind him swept the highly chromed exhaust, rumbling with a barely contained power. Dark Visor's cloak streamed behind him. He wore a tight-fitting suit of black plastileather, decorated with studs and chains. This mean-looking outfit gave protection against the deadly vacuum of space, laser fire, and even small meteorites. Dreadlord changed down a gear with a booted foot, twisted the throttle with a gloved hand, and dived at the senator's ship, guns blazing. From the bridge of the leading Star Crusher, Admiral Pitter watched Dark Visor's relentless attack on the defenseless vessel. That is one mean dude, he murmured. Captain Needit nodded. No lie. The Admiral flicked a switch, his amplified voice boomed through the corridors of the Star Crusher. Prepare to board this senator's ship. Swarms of armored stomp troopers hurried to obey. On board the senator's ship, all was chaos. Princess Leia, Origami, staggered as the stricken vessel swayed and jutted under the withering hail of fire. Captain Antifreeze strode onto the bridge. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "Women and children first." Laia whirled to face the panic-stricken commander. Captain, will you please take off that dress, put down that teddy bear, and listen to me? The deflector shields are down, moaned the captain. No, they're not, the princess said confidently. Yes, they are, insisted Captain Antifreeze. We'll be boarded any minute. No, we won't. Chill, Antifreeze. We'll soon be landing on El Capone. The captain bit his nails. The ship isn't gonna make it to El Capone. The plant you're carrying will never reach the rebels. We're all doomed. Doomed! He raced for the bridge, shouting, "Make way for Teddy! Back coming through!" Alone on the deserted bridge, Princess Laia stood a moment in thought. Then she beckoned to a small droid waiting in the shadows. Weep! Dark Visor strode through the corridor of the captured ship, his boot heel striking sparks on the deck. His rasping breath echoed through the walls. He halted as two stomp troopers appeared, dragging a struggling figure. Princess Laia glared up at the Dreadlord. Dark Visor, she snapped. You've got a nerve coming here. Visor stared down at her. Well, well, if it isn't Minnie Mouse. Leave my hairstyle out of this, Laia stamped her foot. Two more stomp troopers appeared, marching two droids at gunpoint. One looked like a moving garbage can. The other was a humanoid shape. It slouched along in a surly fashion, muttering sourly to itself. We found these two hiding in the cargo bay, sir, reported the leading trooper. The Dreadlord turned to the humanoid droid. I see you are a diplomatic droid. Yes, indeed, sir. Politeness is my middle name. The humanoid robot's metallic features suddenly twisted into a sneer. Mind you, my first name is Up, and my last name is yours, copper. The droid spat a drop of oil onto Visor's polished boots. Visor pointed a finger at the droid. An arc of electronic fire leapt from the hand, and the ill-mannered machine gave a screech of electronic agony. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I seem to have a malfunction in my politeness chip, you big palooka. Whoops, I do apologize again, whined the droid. I'm Do-Re-Mi-Fa, and this bucket of bolts here. He paused to give the smaller droid a little kick. It's Solar-Ti-Do. The small droid snarled, Drat that frattle rat! And then sniggered, Visor gave an irritated gesture. Dispose of them. Princess Laia began to struggle again. Leave them alone, she yelled. Visor gave her a considering look. So these droids are of value to you. Then you can save them by telling me where you've hidden the plans. I don't know what you're talking about. The Dreadlord looked at the princess, took the princess' chin in one gloved hand. I think you do. I mean the plans for the Empire's new secret weapons. The ones that were stolen by Goody spies and passed on to you. You'll never pin the rap on me, Visor. We shall see. So, what shall I do with your droids? Leave them out of this. I think I'll have them melted down for scrap. The princess began to wail. Sure, melt them down, just don't send them to that planet out there. Dark Visor glanced out of the port to the orange-yellow planet spinning beneath the ship. In a desert world of Toony Looney, home of the worst scum in the galaxy. Visor turned his evil gaze back to the princess. Or I could have them torn to bits before your very eyes. The princess sobbed in terror. Anything, just so long as you don't send them to that planet. How about I reprogram their memory banks with an ice pick? Yes! Whatever, just melt them down, tear them apart, do your worst, just don't send them out there! Ha ha ha, the Dreadlord gave an evil chuckle. Oh God, you call that evil fuck. The Dreadlord gave an evil chuckle. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to send those droids to that planet out there. Dark Visor was too preoccupied to notice the cunningness glint in Princess Leia's eyes. Over her shrieks of protest, he gave out his orders. Moments later, the droids were inside the escape pod, tumbling down towards the sands of Toonaluni. Do-Re-Mi Fa glared at Solar-Ti-Do. Well, he observed fitfully, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into. And that's chapter 1 over. Chapter 2, Droids in Danger. Toonaluni, a planet of sand and sun and sun. This is not a misprint. Toonaluni had 2 suns, one for daytime and one for nighttime. This meant there never was a nighttime, which confused everyone, especially the desert owls who had taken to wearing wraparound shades. Perfect slogan for the Toonaluni Tourist Agency would have been Toonaluni, the planet of sand and sun. Wait, sun and sand and sun. But there was no Toonaluni Tourist Agency, because no one in their right mind, all the left mind in case of Zargians, who do everything backwards, would ever have wanted to visit Toonaluni. It was not only a planet of sun and sand and sun, it was a planet of killing, maiming, kidnapping, thieving, gambling, and other nasty words ending in ing. In short, it was a planet not to be visited if at all possible. Another perfect tourist slogan would have been, visit Toonaluni before you die. This was because it was common knowledge that if you ever did visit Toonaluni as a tourist, you would die. You might last a couple of hours under the sun, but eventually the Jaffas, the Guts, the Hots, the Grubbers, the Bashers, or any other nasty life form that lived on Toonaluni would relieve you of your freedom, your valuables, and your life, and your pants. It was onto this planet that the 2 droids climbed out of their escape pod. Do-Re-Mi Fa stared at the sun-bleached desert sand dunes. I don't suppose you brought any sunblock with you, did you stupid little garbage truck? He snapped at his droid companion before putting his hand to his mouth. I do beg your pardon for my uncouth language, you useless outside-baked bean can. Oops, sorry. Dweep, 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 dweeped Solar-Ti-Do. What do you mean this planet looks familiar? Asked Do-Re-Mi Fa. I've only just arrived. Dweep. Do-Re-Mi Fa looked shocked. You mean you have a feeling that we've actually been here before, but the reader isn't supposed to know that until the prequel comes out? Dweep. Solar-Ti-Do rotated his lid by ways of agreement. I wish those authors would make up their minds, grumbled Do-Re-Mi Fa. He began to walk across the hot sands. After a few moments, he began to scratch himself. I think I got sand in my parts. Sniggered Solar-Ti-Do. Shut up or I'll send an electrostatic discharge through your processor. You wouldn't like that, would you little numbskull? Solar-Ti-Do stopped sniggering. Oh dear, I am sorry, apologized Do-Re-Mi Fa. It must be this heat. Oh well, I suppose it can't get any worse. And that was when the Jaffas showed up in a huge scrap metal van. Do-Re-Mi Fa gave an electronic sigh. It just got worse. The Jaffas were reputed as the best used goods sales beings in the universe. They had even been known to sell gazumpas to the backwards tribe of Sepmazag, a feat long thought to be impossible. They were especially good at selling second-hand droids, and they didn't care how they obtained them. Doremi Fa stared at the small hunched figures that rushed out of the scrap metal van. Jaffers stared at the two droids, their orange eyes glowing with excitement as they rubbed their hands together. Now, we must be extra polite to these people, otherwise we could get in deep trouble, Doremi Fa whispered to Solartito. Leave this to me. He turned to the Jaffers. What are you staring at, you great ugly bunch of double-dealing, dishonest scumbags? Let me tell you this, I think you should go and stick a Jaffa peacemaker shot a bolt of electro-force. And Doremi Fa was unable to finish his sentence. If Toonaloony was the roughest, toughest place in the lawless basin rim, then the capital, must get out of here, was the roughest, toughest spaceport in the entire universe. All the cities in Toonaloony were pretty rough. Must be going, must fly, must dash, and must you do that at the dinner table all had bad reputations. But must get out of here was bad with capital B, A, and D. All of the baddest bars and all of the baddest spaceports and all the baddest planets and the baddest solar systems had the baddest bar, and must get out of here was Rick's. The customers at Rick's were a colourful bunch. Literally, there were more colours in Rick's bar than there were colours in the rainbow and the Technicolor planet Bath. 323 at the last count, although this changes every time someone has a takeaway pizza. Rick's was a hangout of the down and outs, and the up and ins, and the back to fronts. Chili the Hot was sitting at the bar. He downed a glass of Toonaloony Sunrise, local specialty, and turned to watch the band that had just begun to play. He stared at the musicians, and then at his empty glass, panic welling up through the alcoholic fog that passed for his brain. Ah! He screamed. I'm having hallucinations. I just thought I saw a small blue elephant playing the drums. I swear I'll never touch another drink again. Pipe down, Chili, grunted Dorothy, the owner of Rick's. She nodded toward the band. There is a small elephant playing the drums, and a pink one playing the trompophone. Chili switched from terror to indifference in the blink of an eye. In that case, I'll have another sunrise with a dash of rocket propellant. Pig! Get your butt in here! After a pause, just long enough to suggest that he had other important things to do and wasn't intimidated by Aunt Dorothy, actually, Puke Moonwalker slouched into the bar. He was, even his best friends would have been forced to admit if he'd had any, an unprepossessing youth whose gangling body was wrapped in a white linen smock and whose sallow face was set in an expression of permanent discontent. What you been doing, Puke, you lazy good-for-nothing? Working on my road racer out back. Puke held up grubby, oil-stained hands to confirm his story. In the drag races next week, I gotta beat Shebang the Hole, so I can cut loose of this life of slavery and at this bar and head up for the stars. Can't speak today. Slavery, spat Dorothy. Haven't I brought you up with the sweat of my brow and the grease of my elbows? Haven't I been like a mother to you? You keep stopping my allowance if that's what you mean, replied Puke bitterly. Shut up, you loser. Stop dreaming and mix me a sunrise headbanger for this customer. She nodded towards Chili. And go easy on the liquid nitrogen. Puke mixed the lethal cocktail, and the liquid nitrogen very, very carefully. Chili gulped it down. There was a pause as his eyes, all 5 of them, bulged wide open. Smoke began to shoot out of Chili's ears and nose. He fell back off his chairs and onto the floor, antennae twitching. Aunt Dorothy turned back to Puke. Quit playing with your dumb rod racer on my time. Get over to Jeff's sales room and buy a new bar droid to help me out. I'm rushed off my feet. She must be busy, thought Puke as he glanced down at his adoptive aunt's 19 feet. That cold coffee. An hour later, Puke arrived at the Jaffa sales room. He glanced around at the notices lining the wall. Droids, droids for sale, they're going beep. Just in, second-hand handy droids with 16 hands. Hammer droids at rock-bottom prices. Can I help you, sir? Jaffa's sales being slid over to him with a smile of all sales beings everywhere. The Jaffa's orange eyes burnt brightly at the prospect of a sale. Yes, you can. I need a droid. Well, congratulations, sir. You've come to the right place, marmed the Jaffa. I got droids coming out of me ears. It must be very small droids. Oh, very good, sir. Small droids coming out of my ears. What a joker you are, said the Jaffa, thinking something unprintable. Follow me, sir. I've got the perfect droid for you. Just in today. The Jaffa shuffled over to a metallic figure standing inert on a podium with the words, "No deposit, easy terms," around its base. What about this one, sir? Lovely model, low mileage, low maintenance, only one owner. Puke eyed the droid doubtfully. Does it talk? Talk, sir, talk. The Jaffa laughed. Of course it talks all known languages and some that haven't even been invented yet. I'll show you. The Jaffa took out a screwdriver and stuck it in the droid's ear. Head where the suns don't shine! There was a pause as Doremi Fa blinked and tried to come to terms with where he was and why two pairs of eyes were staring at him in wonder. What are you staring at, wimp? Snapped Doremi Fa. Sal's being gave a humorous laugh. Don't worry about that, sir. Simply a malfunctioning politeness chips. Nothing that can't be fixed with a light beam screwdriver and a sonic sledgehammer, the Jaffa said pointedly. Doremi Fa changed his tone immediately. Oh dear, I do apologize. I seem to be a little disorientated. 1 minute I was in the desert, now I seem to be somewhere else. I don't know how can Puke listened as the droid rambled on and on. It was strange. There was no way he should ever buy this droid, but he began to feel an affinity towards it. It was as if he had met he and the droid were connected in some mysterious way. And I'm sure Little Runt is around here too. Doremi Fa looked around the room. Yes, there he is. He pointed to Solar Tito, who was propped up underneath one of the hemidroids. The Jaffa was starting to smell a very good deal. I could offer you a bargain price if you took the 2 droids, sir. Puke shook his head. He pointed to Doremi Fa. No, I'll just take this one. Very good, sir. I'll just go and get my price list. The Jaffa moved away towards his terminal. Doremi Fa moved towards Puke and whispered, Would you please take my friend as well? We've been through ever so much together. I only need 1 droid, replied Puke. Oh, please, sir, begged Doremi Fa. The droid's eyes glinted maliciously, and his tone changed to one of menace. Or else I'll show you what I can do with the sharp, pointy tools of the soft part of your anatomy, and that'll only be for starters. Puke gulped and turned and called out to the sales being. I'll take the little one as well. And that is the end of chapter 2. Okay, I'm going to take a short break right here. Intermission. So I can refill this coffee, because it's cold. Chat amongst yourselves. Alright. Where did I put the fuck? Hang on a sec. Right, intermission is about over. Fucking microphone on. I assume you guys can hear me now. Okay. Chapter 3. You are at the bar. Next day, a leathery-skinned, spacefaring old man came limping through the bar door, dragging a large battered ship's chest. He had an eye patch and a plasti-steel leg, and he was singing an old space shanty. 15 droids on a deactivated droid's upper body cavity, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of silicone lubricant. The old spacer hopped over to Puke, who was sweeping the old bar step. "What's your name, lad?" Puke told him. "Well, looky here, Puke lad," leered the old rascal. "You can bring me a double Whopper burger with fries and a bottle of Maxi Grog." He suddenly reached out and grabbed Puke by the front of his tunic, dragging the young man closer. "And see here, matey." The old space dog glanced fearfully to the left and right. "Do ye tell me if you see a man in black wearing a mask and a black cloak who breathes like this? Like, yeah, breathing like that, fuck. And your old shipmate'll make you worth your while. That he will. Ha-ha-ooh-ah-ee-ooh-ah, matey." Yes, sir," said Puke nervously. "You and me'll get on fine, then," growled the old man. "Grab hold of me chest, lad." After a moment, the old man said, "I meant me spaceship chest, matey." "Oh, sorry." Puke let go of the old spacefarer, who stumbled into the bar, leaving Puke to struggle with his luggage. After seeing the old spacer to his room, Puke mooched miserably into the bar. Do-Re-Mi-Fa looked up from polishing glasses. "Can I get you anything, sir?" he asked, "you pointless pile of na-na droppings." Puke glared at him. "You sure you're a diplomatic droid?" "Course I'm sure." The droid gave an evil cackle. "Only I got this malfunctioning politeness chip you may have noticed, Dork Brain." Flicked an olive at Salatito. The little droid paused in the act of flipping his dome and emptying the contents of the dustpan into it, and quivered angrily. "Second fraggin' razzin' frazzin'!" Beep. "Recrassedly!" Do-Re-Mi-Fa shook his mechanical fist. "Go ahead, you rust-eaten heap of junk. Blame me for everything. Singin' figgin' dipstick!" Beep, he. "Yeah, the same to you, One-Eye." The enraged diplomatic droid began to hurl bottles and cocktail shakers at Salatito, who retaliated by zapping Re-Mi-Fa with his electronic prod. Puke waded in to stop the furious droids damaging each other. "Hey, cut it out!" Suddenly, a well-aimed swizzle stick seemed to stop the little droid in its tracks. Solar became still, a panel on his body flipped open to reveal a keypad, and a well-modulated female voice floated up from the mini-speaker system. "Welcome to the Droidophone mail service," the voice said. "To hear the secret message from Princess Lyra Origami to Obla D. Obla Dan, Jello Knight, please press 1. To access the plans to the baddie's dreadful new secret weapons, please press 2. Puke was no longer listening. Did he just say Princess Lyra Origami? And he breathed in wonder. Seen her on the Tri-V. She's a babe, and she's loaded. He gave a little smile of pure greed. And if she's sending secret plans, what's the little droid's memory could be is... But what's in this little droid's memory could be worth a fortune. Aye, that it is, Puke lad, rasped a soft voice behind him. Puke gave a squeak of alarm and spun around. Standing behind him was the old spacefarer. He pressed the muzzle of a laser pistol into Puke's suddenly knotted midriff. That message is for me, Obla D. Obla Dan. Only these days I called myself Old Dan. You wouldn't be thinking of stealing them plans from Old Dan, would ye? Puke shook his head hurriedly. Good lad, 'cause if you were, I might be forced to fill you full of photons. Purely a matter of business and no hard feelings. Thrust the gun into his belt. Come on, Puke, lad, and bring them droids. It's someone I want you to meet. Coffee. Coffee. The old man led Puke and the droids to a quiet booth at the back of the bar. Already sitting in it was a shifty-looking man and a huge hairy creature that growled menacingly as they approached. The human gave Puke a steely glance and nodded slightly. Hands up! Puke reached for the ceiling. A look of pain crossed the other man's face. No, that's my name, he explained wearily. Oh, Puke lowered his arms, feeling foolish. Hands up indicated to the huge hairy being. And this is my partner, Chucky Bicky. He's a cookie. He's strong and he's mean. Agreed the cookie. God damn. Agreed the cookie, biting a chunk out of the table for emphasis. Old Dan lowered himself into the seat next to Hans. An urgent whispered conversation took place, during which Hans glanced at Puke and at the small droid peering out nervously from behind his legs. Okay, Hans drawled. If these plans are as good as that you say they are, they ought to be worth megabucks. To the goodies or to the baddies. He threw back his head and laughed, then signaled to Chucky Bicky, who grabbed Puke and tucked him under one great hairy arm. Puke was half smothered in fur. What are you gonna do to me? He quavered, fighting for breath. Old Dan grinned from ear to ear. We be going to kidnap you. At that moment, Aunt Dorothy's pet octopooch trotted round from behind the bar in search of things to scrounge. It stopped dead when it saw the giant cookie, backed away as fast as its tentacles could carry it, and began to bark hysterically. Chucky Bicky roared at it. Aunt Dorothy came sailing out from behind the bar. Toto, stuff it! And then she slapped the huge hairy creature with her apron. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, scaring a poor thing like that. To Puke's amazement, the cookie dissolved into floods of tears, punctuated with whines and grunts, which Do-Re-Mi-Fa translated with relish. What'd you do that for? I wasn't doing nothing. Puke gazed at the sobbing monster. I thought this guy was supposed to be tough. Old Dan rolled his eyes in exasperation. Well, you see, Puke lad, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Tish. Aunt Dorothy's eyes narrowed. Hey, where you be taking Puke? Puke turned to a beseeching gaze on her. Aunt Dorothy, they're kidnapping me. They're gonna drag me halfway across the galaxy to face terrible dangers and untold hardships. His aunt brightened up at once. You'll be not wanting your room then. As Puke gazed at her in shock, he realized that the bar had gone quiet. A foul smell had seeped into every corner of the room. In the silence, Puke heard a slithering sound and a rumbling laugh. Ho, ho, ho. Psh. God damn it, I can't do these things. Hans roared. Hans groaned and reached for his gun. Something tells me that ain't Santa Claus. And a bloated shadow fell across the little group. Puke looked up into the vile and merciless features of Grabber the Gut. Behind the crime lord's gross and slug-like body stood the ruthless bounty hunter Bobby Socks. Laser rifle at the ready. Behind him came a small army of Grabber's hired assassins. Her-ha. 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 Okay, I've given up on trying to make the sound effects. Old Dan blanched. There was that, and that's either some poor devil with really terrible case of asthma, or into the dark bar, flanked by stump troopers, strode in the terrible figure of Dark Visor. That is the end of Chapter 3. Beginning Chapter 4. Dirty Tricks at Rick's. Oh, I do love me some coffee. Puke stared at the figure of Visor and felt the sudden, inexplicable urge to play football with him. What have we here? Snarled Visor. Or maybe go camping, thought Puke. He shook his head to clear it just as suddenly as it arrived. The feeling was gone. Dan, he stuttered, you know how you were asking me to tell you if I ever saw a man in black, wearing a mask, a black cloak, who breathes like, her-ha, 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 breathed Visor. Yeah, just like that. Hey, lad, replied Dan, chewing on his beard nervously. I think I just spotted him. He's over there. You don't say, lad. The old man eyed Visor like a rabbit watching a snake. And in case you hadn't noticed, continued Puke, the fat blob over there is Grabber the Gut, and he's not very nice at all. Good evening, Mr. Grabber. Grabber made no answer. He watched warily as Visor moved forwards. My former master, Obladi Obladan, growled the Dreadlord. What are you doing here? The old space pirate gave a sickly grin. Oh, I'd just be passing through, Doc, just passing through. He wheedled, touching his forelock. And what brings you to these parts, if I might be so bold as to ask? I am after a certain information, and I believe it can be found in this vicinity. Visor stared around the room before his unforgiving eyes rested on Solartido. Old Dan shuffled over to Visor. Looky here, Doc. I'll cut you a deal. For a small price, I may be able to help you locate what you're looking for. I do not need your help, old man. Now stand aside or I will finish off what I began years ago. Don't make me cut off your other leg. The Dreadlord turned his back on Dan and began to give orders to the stump troopers. Immediately, Dan's hand dropped to his side. With a deft flick, he yanked his plasticsteel leg from its socket and pointed it towards Visor. Vazang. Puke's mouth dropped open. Dan's leg was a power sword, the weapon of the Jello Knights. Legendary masters of the Source and guardians of the peace of the universe. Puke stared reverently at the frantically hopping figure. Old Dan, a Jello Knight? Vazung! In the blink of an eye, Visor had spun around to block Dan's unbalanced swing with his own power sword. Before Puke's astonished eyes, the lords of the Source prepared to meet each other in a titanic struggle, their power swords glowing with the energy of exploding stars. Vazang! Dan's sword gave out. He looked closely at it and gulped. Damn the incarnations, he wailed. Low battery power, I knew I should have charged it. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Visor began to advance on the hopping figure. Haha, just kidding, Doc. Just kidding. Can't you take a joke? You always used to be able to take a joke, whined Dan unconvincingly. I'll just be putting my leg back on and using it to scoot you on out of here. And you can have the droids and whatever else you be wanting. But grab of the gut slid over to Visor. Ho, 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 no way, Murthaw. He bulged in gutties. Smith Arkyard Visor, ho, ho, ho. Fuck, I can't do voices worth shit. Dan moved quickly out of Visor's reach. The Dreadlord looked bemused. What did he say? Do-Re-Mi fast stepped forwards. Excuse me, Mr. Dreadlord, Dark Visor, sir. I think I might be able to be of assistance. Allow me to translate it. Visor mentioned go ahead with his hand. Mr. Grabber wishes to tell you that the planet Toonaloonie is his territory, and therefore there is no possibility that he will allow you to take anything away from his bar. Or indeed, this planet. You big dollop of comet slime, the droid added on his own initiative. Visor began to breathe heavily. Tell him that this is my property, it belongs to me, and I will have it. Do-Re-Mi Fa relayed Visor's message, and also added that the fact that Grabber was the spitting image of something that had come from the armpits of Fatboy Fleas and the moon of Farty Poop. Grabber has none too pleased. Spin on it as well! Ho ho ho. In that case, Fatface, the great Grabber will reluctantly be forced to blast you into little pieces. Vazung. With a deft downward stroke, Visor brought his power sword down on the tip of Grabber's tail and cut it clean off. Ho ho ho. Alright. Within milliseconds, Grabber's hench things and the Stomp Troopers were firing at each other. Puke, Dan, and the droids huddled under the table, trying to avoid the searing bolts of electroforce, and were quickly joined by the quaking Cookie. Momentarily maddened with fear, Hans launched himself into the arms of the giant dark figure next to him. He gripped Dark Visor's neck in a terrified chokehold. "Mommy!" he screeched. "I don't think so." With a contemptuous shrug, the Dreadlord threw the quivering pilot to the floor. He pointed an imperious finger. "Don't move! Hands up!" Immediately, all the stormtroopers and Grabber's hench things flung up their arms, their weapons crashing to the ground. Dan seized the opportunity with both hands and one leg. "Run!" he yelled. Puke, Salatino, hands up, and the Cookie followed the madly hopping Jello out of the barred door, out through the barred door before anyone could stop them. "No!" screeched Visor. "Pick up your weapons, you fools!" The Stomp Troopers obeyed and began scrabbling around the floor for their weapons. "You imbeciles!" cried Visor. "I didn't say hands up, I said hands up!" There was another crash of weapons. "Not again," moaned the Dreadlord pitifully. By the time Dark Visor and his men had disengaged from the fight with Grabber's forces and piled out into the streets, the fugitives were nowhere to be seen. That is the... Alright, I guess I'll use an app of voice. Now I have to do an impression. Whenever I do an impression, I'll use this voice. Yeah, alright. We're on to chapter 5. You're bugging me. Right, Vegeta. This is my Nappa voice. Right, chapter 5. You're bugging me. The fleeing group screeched into one of must-get-out-of-here's many space hangars. Before them stood an excuse for a spaceship that seemed to be held together by rust and wishful thinking. Puke gulped at the rotting hulk. "We're going to escape in that? Sure thing, kiddo," smiled Zap proudly. "This the Millennium Bug, fastest ship on this side of the Snicker Galaxy." "Oh," Puke looked dubious. "How many ships are there on this side of the Snicker Galaxy?" "Just the one," said Hans with a mad grin. "Let's get out of here double pronto." "Wait!" cried Puke, glancing around in consternation. "Where's my droid? Where's Do-Re-Mi for?" Salatito beeped and shook his head in an agitated manner. Old Dan scratched his head. "I think he said, 'Let's go before we find out.'" He must have been caught by Dark Visor. Puke thrust out his weak chin. "We have to go back and rescue him." Hans gazed at Puke in amazement. "Why?" he said. Puke gave him a hard stare. "Because we don't leave our droids in there. Puke, lad," said Dan in a sort of very gentle voice people used to speak to axe-wielding maniacs or very small children. "This is Do-Re-Mi Fa we're talking about." Puke thought for a moment. "Generally speaking, we don't leave our droids there, but in this case we could make an exception." He followed Zup and the cookie up the boarding ladder to the heart of the spaceships. Solar, Tito, and Dan respectively trundled and hopped behind. The doors creaked shut behind them. Hans dived into the pilot seat. Chucky Bicky took the seat next to him and began pressing buttons and pulling levers. "Computer, get us out of here!" shouted Hans, hitting several buttons on the ship's console. A metallic voice grated discontentedly from the speaker system. "Oh, and a big hello to you too," grumbled the computer. "It doesn't take a second to say hello. How are you? Have you had a nice day, does it?" Hans scowled. All right. Hello, how are you? Have you had a nice day?" "Since you ask, no. It's been an absolute female Canaanoid." "Just get us out of here," yelled Hans. Chucky Bicky roared in agreement. "Say please," replied the computer. "I will not say please," shouted Hans. "Get us out of here now. Temper. I think we'll be sitting here until someone remembers their manners." And with that, the Millennium Bug's power shut off. At the same moment, a squad of stomp troopers hurtled into the hangar and began firing at the blood. Chucky Bicky howled and hid behind Hans' seat. Puke bit his ragged nails and whimpered. Dan glared at Hans, who was sitting with his arms folded and lips pursed. "Say please, and let's get out of here, matey," he growled, "before we end up looking like frazzled lumps of yarg meat on an Aussie man's barbecue." "Well, not," Hans answered petulantly. Dan stared pointedly at Hans. His eyes shone with a strange light. Hans stiffened. His eyes glazed over. Very slowly he began to speak. "I'm very sorry, computer. Have you had a nice day? And please, would you let us take off now, if that's not too much bother for you? Thank you so much. Please. The ship's power snapped back on. "Well, that's better." Puke was amazed. Here was a real-life display of the Jello Knight's power. He moved over to Dan. "Incredible," he enthused. "Were you using the legendary power of the Source, where you can turn minds and make people obey your every wish just through the power of telepathic communications?" Dan looked at Puke, puzzled. "No, lad, I was using the power of a laser pistol stuck in his left ear hole." "Now, before we go," trilled the computer happily, I just need to check that everyone has fastened their seatbelts, extinguished their killer sticks, returned their seats to the upright position, and read this badly drawn leaflet giving optimistic details on what to do in the event of a sort of crash that leaves the ship virtually intact and all the crew miraculously unwounded. Blah. The stormtroopers were now... Stomptroopers were now using... rocket-propelled plasma grenades, and an explosion rocked the ship. Dan leapt across to the main computer terminal. His voice had more than a touch of titanium about it. "Listen up, compy boy. If you don't get us away in 2 shakes of a Danubian megaduck's tail, I'll splice your mainframe and shiver your transistors. Get us out of here. Whoosh factor 10. Make it yo-ho-ho so." The computer was stubborn but not stupid. Okay, it said in an electronic wheedle. "There's no need to be so aggressive. I was just going to get us going. Hold on to your bits and pieces." Dark Visor stood outside the hangar and watched the bug shoot off. He was annoyed but undismayed. He may not have the plans, but he still had the princess. She would reveal the whereabouts of the rebel base once he got her to the Moon of Doom. TM. Yes, the Moon of Doom is a trademark. Moon of Doom trademark. He would get the truth out of her there. His gaze travelled to the silent figure standing dutifully beside him. And now, he thought, I have another card to play. Set a course for El Capone. Hey. El Capone, whatever. Ordered Dan. The sooner we get out of here, the sooner we get the gold stuff. Doubloons, pieces of 10. Pieces of 10? I thought they were pieces of 8. That'd be inflation for you, lad. I suppose you'll take all the money and bury it on some desert asteroid and make a map and come for it years later, said Puke, who had read one too many romantic space pirate stories when he was little. Dan stared at Puke. Don't be stupid, lad. I'll spend it all, every last bit of it, on all sorts of things that'll make an old space dog happy. He gave Hans a playful jolly space pirate buff on the shoulder. So hurry up, Zup! Hans looked daggers at Dan, but the old man was still carrying his laser pistol. Message received and course set, the pilot said grumpily. Get ready for super duper hyperspeed. He and Chucky Bicky, who had come out of his refuge the moment the ship had taken off, bickered for a few moments about final navigation corrections before Hans turned back to the passengers. Here we go now! He hit the big red button. There was a long pause, and then another even longer one. Now! Hans hit the button again. Nothing. Hans began to drum his fingers. I'm waiting, he hissed to the computer. He waited. So did the rest of the crew. Computer, why aren't we in super duper hyperspeed? Because someone trilled the computer. And I won't mention any names, but watch where my optical's receptors rest. Someone lost all the money that was supposed to pay for repairs to my super duper hyperdrive motors at the Boots All Night Casino and Pleasure Palace playing gin rummy with a bunch of high rollers, who he only found out after the game were telepaths and therefore knew every card he had in his hand. That's why. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Hans gave his passengers a feeble grin. Well, he said in a would-be casual tone, maybe we'll take our time, take in some sights and enjoy the ride. There's no need to rush. It's not as if El Capone is going anywhere. As the Millennium Bug sputtered through space at the speed of an interstellar golf buggy, Puke sought out old Dan. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Was Visor telling the truth? Asked Puke. Are you really Obla D, Obla Dan, Jello Knight? Dan smiled a salty space dog smile. That I be, lad, that I be. I've heard so much about the Jello Knights, but I've never thought I'd ever see one. Well, here I be in full glory. Well, most of me. Dan reached down and rubbed his metal leg. Are you really a master of the sauce? Asked Puke. Dan nodded. But what is the sauce? 'Tis everything, Puke lad. Dan's eyes shone with a mystic light. 'Tis the greatest power in the universe. 'Tis an energy field that is created by all living things. But it has an upside and it has a downside. Visor had a power sword as well, mused Luke. Is he a Jello Knight? Dan looked sad. Was, lad, was. He ain't no more. He went to the downside. I tried to stop him, but alas and alack a day, I failed. And this is my reward. He pointed at his leg. Visor had me leg off. Visor did that to you? Puke was outraged. Aye, lad, that he did. Well, it was either Visor or a great white space shark. I can't remember for sure. I've drunk a lot of grog since then. Why did Visor turn to the downside? Puke asked. Dan shook his head. "'Tis not a story for the young ears, lad." Please tell me, begged Luke, hoping for a tale of old death or glory days and from the end of the Republic. No, Dan's voice was set. And that is my final word on the matter. At that moment, Hans up breezed into the cabin. Are you two chewing the fat? He asked. Hey Dan, have you told Puke a story about his dad being a Jello Knight and yet how you were his best buddy and Visor ratted on his dad and chopped him up like coleslaw and turned to the downside and all that? There was an awkward pause. Dan stared photon bombs at Hans. No, I guess you hadn't, Hans said awkwardly. I'll just be off then. I've got to go and desalinate the phase couplings. You know how it is. Busy. The awkward pause continued before Puke finally broke the silence. Is what Hans just said true? Dan said nothing, tears welling up in Puke's eyes. I never knew my father, he whispered. My Aunt Dorothy told me it was he sold timeshare holidays on the planet Ark, the most dangerous place in the known universe. He said he had to scarp it when the relatives of his clients who moved there started to wonder why they never returned calls. That was to protect you, lad. But I knew your father all right, many years ago. And it's true what Hans said. He was a Jello Knight like me. Old Dan pulled a frayed travel pouch towards him and rummaged inside. A Jello Knight has a few personal possessions, Puke lad. But your dad gave me something for you. What? Something I've kept safe for many years, knowing one day when the time was right, I would give it to you. Here, lad, this is rightly yours. Dan took a small cylindrical object out of his pouch and gave it to Puke. Puke took it and gazed at the shining metal surface in awe. My father's power sword, he whispered. No, lad, that's his thermos flask. This is his power sword. Dan handed Puke a grubby-looking power sword. It got a bit burnt in your father's last battle. Puke took the sword. What do you mean, his final battle? He asked. Ain't no easy way to say this, Puke lad. Your father was killed by Dark Visor. That man dressed in black with the raspy voice that you met today. Puke choked back a sob. Visor killed my father? Afraid so, lad. Then let the whole galaxy know that I hereby take a most sacred vow. Puke held the power sword close to his heart. I, Puke Moonwalker, will avenge my father's death. He went on through gritted teeth. I swear that I will destroy Dark Visor. I will follow him to the ends of the universe, to the last breath of my body, to the last drop of my blood. Puke lad, interrupted Dan. You ought to know something about him before you start carrying on like that. He is the most powerful man in the galaxy. He can choke the life out of your body without even touching you and leave you an empty husk, broken like a doll. He can hurt you in more ways than you can imagine. He can call upon the power of the Source and crush you so that every nerve in your body will scream out in unimaginable agony until you put your crushed and mutilated hands together and beg him on your broken, bleeding knees to let you die, just to be rid of the pain. There was a long silence. Puke shrugged with elaborate unconcern. Oh well, I'm not the kind to bear a grudge. Let bygones be bygones, I say. He probably had his reasons. Old Dan stood up. Alright, well, times are getting on. Let's see this message from young Princess Leia. Hey, matey. He led his way to the Bugs conference room. Blah! Okay, that's the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5. End of chapter 5. End of chapter 5. Yes, it is. Well, well, really, it is about 141 pages. I'm at page 50. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I guess I'm only going to do up to... Wait. And I probably can't. Oh well. I guess I'll do to the end of chapter 6, shall I? Is that a good idea? You okay with that? Alright. And I will... yeah, I'll do the rest another day, another time. Alright, chapter 6. A bad day for Al Capone. The motley crew of the Millennium Bugs sat expectantly round the chipped Formica conference table. Dan gave Salatido an ingratiating leer. Would you care to play the princess's message for old Dan, matey? For a machine with no face, the little droid did manage to do a good job of looking defiant. Just you try it, Buster! Old Dan's smile broadened. He leaned closer to the little robot. Or would you care for old Dan to pull all your diodes out one by one and make you eat them? Beeping with alarm, Salatido flipped open his keypad compartment. Dan pressed the number 1 with a grimy finger, and Leia's message floated across the Millennium Bug's cabin. Hi, Dan. What was that? The tone? Drat, I hate these things. Oh, right. Message for Obla Dan. Oh, you know that bit? Look, Dan, my ship is not under attack. I don't want you to deliver the plans for the Moon of Doom, trademark, which are not in this little droid's memory banks, to Al Capone. Of course, Al Capone is not the secret headquarters of the goodies. So there'd be no point in delivering the plans there, even if they existed, which they don't. Dan gave Puke an apologetic glance. You see, matey, he said as Princess Leia's voice rattled on in the background. People from Al Capone are very honest and upright, so they never tell lies. But Princess Leia, you see, was brought up to be a politician, so you couldn't deliver them even if they were in this little droid's memory, which they aren't. Did I say droid? What droid? I can't see any droid. So, of course, Dan went on, they had to train her how to tell lies. Now she couldn't tell the truth about anything to save her life. He sighed wistfully. A girl after me own heart she is. So there's really nothing to worry about. That's it. See you. Ciao. Yes, bye. Leia's voice trailed off into embarrassed silence. Puke's forehead furrowed in concentration. So what she really meant was, old Dan leapt for his feet and capered with glee. What she meant was, this here's a nice little investment for old Dan's retirement, for him to sell to the highest bidder. Puke looked doubtful, but she said not to take the plan to Al Capone, which means she wants. Oh, we'll take him to Al Capone, never fear, chuckled old Dan. Then his eyes became flinty with greed. And if the goodies ain't prepared to pay a fair price for 'em, well, there's always the Emperor. Hundreds of... Okay. Coffee. Hundreds of stomp troopers, gleaming in their space armor, stood stiffly to attention as the Imperial shuttle glided into the landing bay. The shuttle's landing ramp swung down. Trumpets blared in salute. 1,000 troopers clicked their heels and presented arms with a pinpoint precision as Dark Visor strode invincibly forwards. "Wipe your feet!" A shrill voice came from the small man in a grey uniform who bustled through the ranks of stomp troopers, shrieking with rage. "Did you clean your boots before you came clumping around on my nice clean decks? I don't think so!" The Dreadlord looked down at his scuffed boots. "Sorry," he muttered sheepishly. "Well, sorry won't make it right, will it?" "What's this?" The little man pointed a quivering finger. "Sand! Your boots are full of sand! The stuff gets everywhere! What were you thinking?" Dark Visor cleared his throat. "Great Wuss Tarquin. He growled threateningly. "The Emperor has sent me to take personal command of the fleet defending the Moon of Doom, trademark." "Well, hoity-toity," snapped Great Wuss. "Is that any reason to go in here flinging filth around?" His lip began to quiver. "I mean, look at the state of this battle station. Will you just look at it? I wear myself to a frazzle to keep the most powerful killing machine in the history of the galaxy looking nice. And do people look after it? Oh no, they just leave empty crisp packets lying around all over the place. And as for the rings from people's coffee cups, you just cannot get the stuff off. Honestly, it's enough to bring tears to your eyes." There, said Dark Visor uncomfortably. The evil warlord patted the Great Wuss's quivering shoulders. "People are so ungrateful. There. And after all I've done to them." Tarquin blew his nose loudly. "It's not that as if I'm mind-blowing planets up for people. But could they at least try to keep the place tidy? Is that too much to ask?" The Great Wuss suddenly straightened up and pointed accusingly at Visor. "Where's your apron?" he demanded. Dark Visor regarded him with astonishment. Then he realized what had been bothering him from the moment he stepped into the landing bay. His gaze swept over the massed ranks of stomp troopers. Every last one of them was wearing an apron. Some of them had frills. Dark Visor breathed even harder than usual. Imperial stormtroopers are not supposed to wear anything over their body armor. And how would they keep their nice shiny armor shiny and bright if they didn't wear something over it when they were cleaning their great messy guns? Before the Dreadlord could react, Tarquin had looped an apron's string around his neck and tied it under his cloak. There! Now you won't get that lovely black outfit dirty, will you? The Dreadlord sighed. Can we just get started? He clicked his fingers. Guarded by 2 stomp troopers, Princess Leia came down the ramp to the from the shuttle. The Great Wuss Tarkin, Dark Visor, and Princess Leia stood in the vast control room of the Moon of Doom, trademark. Visor swung to face the princess. Your pitiful rebellion will soon be over, your highness, he snarled. The princess's eyes blazed. How dare you treat a senator like this? Visor waved a gloved hand dismissively. You are a senator no longer. Leia glared. Yes, I am. No, you are not. Aren't, Visor insisted, keeping his temper with difficulty. The Emperor has already dismissed the Senate. No, he hasn't, the Dreadlord towered over. Yes, he has. Has not, has to. Has not, has. Will you stop doing that? Dark Visor clenched his mailed fists. He fought to remain calm. What is more, he will shortly be arriving to see this new great weapon in action. Won't! Visor ground his teeth. Will! Won't! The Dreadlord stamped his feet in fury. Will infinity times +1 and no returns! Leia gazed at him calmly. Not under her breath, she muttered, Won't. Visor ground his teeth. With the supreme effort, he kept his voice level. Before he arrives, we will hold a little demonstration. A demonstration that will prove to the whole galaxy that resistance to the Empire is useless. Since you have refused to tell me the rebel bases, a first target for the Moon of Doom, trademark, will be your own planet. He flicked the switch and a section of wall slid open to reveal a huge view screen, in the center of which spun the planet El Capone. El Capone. I still don't know how to... whatever. El Capone, whatever. Leia rushed forward in alarm. But you can't. He'll kill millions of innocent people. El Capone isn't the goodies base. Aha! Visor said triumphantly. But you always tell lies, don't you? You lied to me about the droids, and you've lied about everything ever since. Will you stop doing that? Dark Visor drew a deep breath. So if you say El Capone isn't the goodies base, then El Capone is the goodies base. Just a minute, said Tarquin thoughtfully. She says El Capone isn't the rebel base, so you think it is? But she could be lying. She is lying, snapped the Dreadlord. Yes, but she could be lying about lying, couldn't she? Did you think about that? She knows you know this, she knows you know she tells lies, so if she tells the truth, you'll think it's a lie. So that when she says El Capone isn't the goodies base, you think she's lying, and then it is. But she may be telling the truth so as to make you think she's lying, but then you'll think that she is when she really isn't. Dark Visor rubbed his expressionless black eyes of the helmet with trembling fingers. Just run that by me again. It's very simple, Leia told him. I might be telling you the truth because you know I tell lies, so if I tell a lie, you'll know it's really true, but if I tell the truth, you'll think it's a lie, so if I want you to believe a lie, I'd have to tell you the truth. Even though we all know I can only tell lies, she beamed at him. The Dreadlord held his helmet in head in his hands and moaned, "Just forget it, I've gone right off the plot." Laia grinned. "Suits me." Just then the intercom buzzed. Dark Visor remained slumped in despair, and the great Tarkin was still muttering in confusion. "Shall I get that?" said Laia brightly. She opened the comms channel. The head and shoulders of a gunnery captain filled the screen. He seemed surprised to see Laia. "Oh, he said lamely. I wanted to ask Dark Visor something." Laia was feeling helpful. "Sure, fire away." "Oh," the captain's brow cleared. "Okay then." His picture faded from the screen. Laia's eyes suddenly widened in horror. Her fingers scrabbled to re-establish the link. "No," she gasped. "I didn't mean—" She was too late. A dreadful lightning bolt of pure energy shot from the station above them and hit El Capone. A moment later, the planet was engulfed in a titanic explosion. Laia watched the remains of her homeworld drift slowly past the view screen. "Whoopsie daisy," she said. Alright. Well, that is how far I will go. That's 6 chapters of Star Wars. Right, what pay? I sure hope you enjoyed listening to me stutter on through this. Sure hope it gave you a couple of quick chuckles. Because I had fun reading it. I hope you enjoyed listening to my ridiculous voice, too. Nice story, but needs more Napa. Hey, Vegeta! Vegeta! I want to catch you in my mouth like a doggy! Oh god, that was awful. Don't let me do that again. Hey, it's kind of hard for me to improv lines at the moment. Hey, yeah. I hope you had a and I'll end this momentarily. Sure hope you enjoyed listening to my creamy voice. I guess I could also narrate most of it like this. This is my Herbert the Perfect voice. Oh god. Fluttershy? What? Alright. Well, okay, I'll end it right here. And I will be uploading this to my page, alright? It's been fun. This has been going for an hour and a half. Alright, see yous. It was fun.